The most important contribution that you can make as a mentor and an educator in the life of a refugee youth is working to create safe environments and trusting relationships. And I really believe that this is what constitutes to therapeutic environments in schools. This involves efforts to connect with students and their families, as well as efforts to understand and emotionally support students by answering questions honestly and attending to any concerns and fears that they might have. And these can range from being able to speak in public, because of lack of English language skills. This might be just concerns with walking around school. This can be concerns with finding new jobs, and any other fears that they might have. One of the questions that people often ask me then is, how am I going to make contact with a young person who doesn't speak English? I don't understand their culture, and I'm afraid that I might make mistakes and perhaps in doing so re-traumatize them or harm them in some capacity without realizing this. And I found that particularly if you want to make connections with students' families, that it really helps to work alongside cultural brokers. A culture broker is an individual who is well immersed in both mainstream school culture and their own ethnic culture. In-school settlement workers, bilingual teachers or other co-workers, diversity liaison workers who are members of an ethnoculture community are all examples of culture brokers. You can connect with a culture broker in some of the schools that have large immigrant and refugee populations, but also you can connect with them directly in community organizations who then will provide that support for students in particular schools. As noted in the game, a culture broker can be particularly important for facilitating adaptation by helping to translate language and cultural differences, and also by providing information on the pre-migration context of refugee communities. So if you have the opportunity to work with a culture broker, it can be very rewarding in terms of enhancing not only your understanding of the community, linking you to the family of the student that you work with, but also having a sort of a partner in your efforts to support and empower a young person. More practically and specifically, there's some things that you can do to support a young person. And this involves often providing structure and stability in the classroom or in the sessions that you have with them. So it's really important that if you're setting up an appointment to meet a young person, that you do so on the same day and if possible at the same time, in order to create stability and consistency in the work that you do, and that helps to enhance trust and safety. Really important for you to work to help a young person share their feelings, but also normalize any fear responses that they have. It can be helpful for you to learn a little bit about what the fear response is like, what happens in our bodies when we feel fearful, and to explain that and help a young person understand what's going on in their bodies as they experience a normal fight-flight response, and that you can help them to understand what that is in order to normalize their fear response. And also, it's really important that you help them to understand that in early settlement, that it's normal to feel a sense of anxiety or concerns as you adjust to a new environment. If possible, if you're in a school setting or you're working with a group of young people, if possible, set aside 10, even 15 minutes a day to discuss any concerns that a young person might have. And we found that this regular little contacts to say, you know what, I'm going to touch base with you and we're just going to talk about anything that's coming up, helps to create this sort of consistency again, but also the safety for a young person to talk about anything that may have happened. So for example, we found that in some of the schools, let's say there's been a crisis in a school setting, or there's been something that's been quite upsetting for young people in a classroom. For example, a young person has had a death in the classroom. It may be that the refugee young person is very much triggered by that experience, and so it'd be particularly helpful that they have that bit of time at the end of the day with you, or at the end of the session with you, to have that one-on-one opportunity to talk about some of the experiences that they've had. In your role as a mentor or as a teacher, you may be the first person to begin to recognize that the young person may be having some learning difficulties. And so, again, you're in an important role here to be able to identify but also refer for any assessments or for further supports that a young person might need. In your role as a mentor, you might be providing tutoring, for example, and that you find that that the difficulty the young person has may have a difficulty that's beyond language, or you're not sure about that. So referring them for extra support or to have another person consider that can be really important. As a role model, you will have young people coming to you with questions regarding career, regarding practical daily living issues, about study skills. So be prepared to offer advice and support in quite a variety of areas, and seek out resources and supports for you in order to provide the appropriate support here. And finally, one of the things we found to be particularly useful is building on existing strengths within the students and their families. Most young people are just really excited about being in schools, particularly if they have had gaps in their education, or if they haven't had the opportunity to be in school because of not having school programming in refugee camps, or major disruptions in the educational systems in their country of origin. And so being in school is often extremely exciting, and it's a strength that they come with, and your ability to build on that and that desire to learn is extremely important. Some other factors that we found to be really helpful with young people is building on reinforcing the importance of extracurricular activities such as music, sports, and the arts. In these instances, young people often don't have to sort of deal with some of the day-to-day language learning activities that they do while they're in school, and have an opportunity not only just to release some of their energy, to experience sort of the joy and excitement from music and other sports and arts, but it's also very much healing in terms of experiences of trauma and grief and loss, having an outlet in a non-verbal modality. It's been considered really helpful. As a leader, a youth leader, you also have an opportunity to capture youth's natural passion for social justice by leading discussions on social justice that reinforce values and respect for difference. It's important that you exercise sensitivity when you use refugee youth as resources in these discussions, because while their life experiences may put them in a very powerful position to share issues of justice with other youth, you need to ensure that they're prepared to do so without becoming overwhelmed or re-traumatized as they discuss their previous experiences. So what we found to be helpful is checking in with a young person and preparing with them ahead prior to actually involving them in some of those discussions or activities. What's also really important is thinking very carefully about the activities that you do, and adapt some of the activities to reinforce resilience and hope, again by using other arts-based outlets or picking specific readings that you can use that will allow, again, young people to really build on their sense of hope, or build on what their strengths are within those activities that you use with them. We've also found that young youth who are refugees are extremely passionate about humanitarian activities. So involving them in leadership activities or involvement with other social justice activities can be extremely empowering. And so consider again some of the activities that you might have. While you may be interested in focusing on building their educational capacities in terms of learning literacy, numeracy, etc., also to think about leadership and ways in which you can enhance those qualities within them. It can be really important. And finally, I would say that it's extremely important that you empower students and their families by bringing into play culturally appropriate and sustainable healing resources. And and this is done by normalizing and supporting the use of resources that exist within the communities, that exist within families. This is particularly important when youth have mental health or learning issues that require specialized assessments and interventions, and you may be involved or be asked questions about what does this involve. Several roles have actually been identified in which cultural brokers can improve access to health and specialized educational services. So consider using cultural brokers can be useful again here. The second role is that cultural brokers can be helpful is educating refugee communities on the services available and the benefits of accessing these services. Cultural brokers can also help you to explain to the families how health and education system works and the ways in which their pre-migration experiences might be affecting their post-migration adaptation. And also another final role that a cultural broker can have, that you can again work with them to assist the family that you or a young person that you're working with, is working with a broker to actively reach out to individuals who may need specific services. Oftentimes, or in oral cultures, the best way to reach groups is by word of mouth rather than using other forms of media, or such as print materials, such as brochures and posters. And so working alongside community members, mentors can play a role in empowering youth and their families to adapt to life in Canada.